I was just about to head out when my mom handed me her phone. "Please plug it in," she said casually. I walked to the charger, screen still on. That's when it happened. The notification popped up. One message. A name I knew I shouldn't see. The words were short, but enough to destroy everything I thought I knew about her. Now, I can't look her in the eye. And what's worse, the secret didn't just involve her, it involved me. Before we dive into the story, we'll love to thank you for your continued support to this channel. If you enjoy this story and stories like this, kindly subscribe and hit on the notification button so you don't miss any of our stories. We will love to hear from you also. Tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. Now let's begin. She handed me her phone like she had done 100 times before, without hesitation, without suspicion, without a clue. "Plug it in for me, will you?" she said, her voice casual, distracted as she poured tea into one of those white ceramic mugs with chipped edges. I nodded, took the phone, and turned to where the charger always sat coiled beside the microwave. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't curious. But the screen was still on, and that's when it happened. A single notification flashed, and my entire reality cracked in half like ice under pressure. The text read, "He doesn't suspect a thing. Same time next week. Red heart. Mark. My uncle. My dad's brother. The same man who used to bring me toys when I was a kid and always smelled like cologne and lies." For a second, I stood frozen, staring at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen. I told myself not to look. I told myself it was probably nothing. But curiosity and dread had already sunk their teeth into me. I tapped the message. It opened a thread that revealed far more than I was prepared for. Flirtations. Secrets. Mentions of hotels and weekends when Dad was away. Plans for a life that excluded him and possibly included me. One message read, "He thinks I'm out with the ladies again. Poor guy. It's almost too easy." Another said, "Do you ever think he'll figure it out? Sometimes I think Ethan suspects." Ethan. That was me. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my ears. Every sound around me became muffled, distant, the hum of the refrigerator, the clinking of the mug against the counter. But my mind was sharp now, cold, calculating. I wasn't just angry. I was awakened. My life up to that point had felt normal. Safe. My parents weren't perfect, but they were steady. Or so I thought. And now, in a matter of seconds, all of that had unraveled because of a phone charger and a single slip-up. I didn't say a word. I didn't slam the phone down or confront her like they do in movies. I backed out of the conversation quietly, emailed the screenshots to myself, then turned off the screen and plugged it in like nothing happened. My hands were trembling, but I kept my face calm. She looked over and smiled as she brought me tea like she always did. "Thanks, sweetheart," she said. Sweetheart. If only she knew. I sat down with the cup and acted normal. But my mind was a storm. My uncle. My mother. My family. What had I been born into? And why did that message, "He can never know the truth about that night," feel like a bomb waiting to detonate? That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory, every family photo, every conversation I had ever had with either of them. I began to realize things I had ignored. Subtle glances. Inside jokes. Times she laughed too hard at Mark's jokes. Times Dad looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. Times when I'd catch Mark looking at me in a way that didn't quite fit the role of uncle. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to break things. I was going to learn everything. So I began digging. I searched through old albums, text backups, storage boxes under the stairs. I found photos from the summer I was conceived. My dad was out of the country for work for almost 2 months. But Mark? He was around. Every weekend. Every gathering. Every smile. Then I found it, wedged between old insurance papers in a faded blue envelope. A DNA test receipt. My chest tightened as I read the date. It was from 18 years ago. I was barely 2. The test had been sent to a private lab. The names weren't clear. It had been paid for in cash, but the implication screamed louder than any name ever could. I stared at it for what felt like an hour before folding it gently and slipping it into my pocket. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew I wasn't going to confront anyone without being prepared. The revenge they deserved had to be silent, surgical, and permanent. I wanted their guilt to grow roots and crack their perfect little world from the inside. I walked downstairs calmly. My mom was on the phone, laughing with someone. Probably him. When she noticed me, she smiled and asked if I wanted eggs. I smiled back. Sure, Mom. Eggs would be great. Because I was ready now. If I was born from betrayal, I would make betrayal my language. And this time, I was going to be the one texting first. The silence between my mom and me that morning felt like any other, comfortable, easy. She placed the eggs on the plate like she had done 1,000 mornings before. But that morning, I didn't see a mother. I saw a woman who had lied to my face for over 2 decades. Every movement she made felt rehearsed. Every word spoken laced with betrayal I couldn't unhear. And yet I smiled. I said thank you. I chewed slowly. Because while she had lied in silence, I had learned the power of pretending. For the next 3 days, I acted normal. I cracked jokes. I joined them for dinner. I even laughed at Uncle Mark's pitiful stories when he came by to help Dad fix a cabinet. But behind those hollow smiles, I was building something, a plan that would not just expose them, but strip them of every illusion of safety they had left. It began with the DNA test. I ordered a new one, this time with no room for error. I used an old toothbrush my mom had carelessly left in the guest bathroom. For Mark, I snagged a hair from his coat when he wasn't looking. I mailed them separately to a private lab under a fake name. Then I waited. And while I waited, I dug deeper. My father had always been quiet, reserved. A man who never raised his voice or questioned things too much. But when I sat with him the following weekend, I noticed something I had missed all my life. A sadness in his eyes. A tiredness not born from age, but from years of shouldering something too heavy to name. As we drank tea in the backyard, I asked him casually, "Dad, did you ever suspect anything strange between Mom and Mark?" He didn't flinch. He just stared into the cup and said, "Some truths are too painful to confirm. So we learn to live beside them, instead of confronting them." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. He knew. And now I knew too. But I wasn't my father. I wasn't going to live beside betrayal. I was going to bury it, along with their reputations, their secrets, and their carefully crafted lies. When the test results came in, I didn't even need to open the PDF. The subject line said it all. Paternity confirmed. Mark A. Redacted is the biological father. There it was. Ink on paper. Proof that my entire existence was built on deceit. Proof that the man who raised me wasn't the man who made me, but the one who made me had lied to his own brother and used me as the cover-up. But this wasn't just about bloodlines anymore. It was about consequences. I started the next phase of my plan. I convinced my dad to update his legal documents, told him he needed protection in case anything ever happened. He trusted me. Always had. He signed power of attorney over to me. I began quietly consolidating his financials, ensuring that every asset, every policy, every piece of property was locked down, away from her access. I filed changes with the lawyer, had her removed as beneficiary on his will, and inserted a clause that stripped her of any entitlement if infidelity was proven. All without saying a single word to her. But I wasn't done. I needed her to feel what it was like to lose something without warning. So I sent an anonymous email to Mark's company, attaching the texts, the timestamps, and the photos. Turns out, Mark had been running for regional director at his firm, a position requiring high moral integrity due to a major PR campaign with a family brand. I knew the board would take it seriously. They did. By the end of the week, Mark was demoted pending investigation. He had no idea I was behind it. Then, I printed every single message I had found on Mom's phone, including the ones she deleted. I compiled the DNA results, the test receipts, and the clause in the trust documents. I placed it all in a thick brown envelope and wrote 2 words on it in bold ink: Family Night. The night I planned to detonate everything. Because if I was a mistake they tried to bury, I would become a storm they couldn't contain. The night I had planned finally arrived. A regular Friday evening, draped in false warmth. My mom insisted on setting the table herself. She wore her favorite necklace, the one Dad gave her for their 20th anniversary. She made her special roast, the one Mark loved. My dad sat at the head of the table as always, quiet, steady. Mark walked in with that smug grin, as if he belonged here, as if this family wasn't just a mask he wore. And me? I was the bomb they didn't know they'd already lit. Dinner began with the usual small talk. My mother gushed over a neighbor's baby. Mark talked about how stressful work had been lately. He didn't know I had caused that stress. I waited, smiling, letting them sip their wine, chew their food, feel safe. Because people don't fear what's coming when they're surrounded by the familiar. But the familiar was about to become foreign. Every word, every smile they'd shared would soon rot under the weight of exposed truth. I waited until the plates were cleared and dessert was being served. Then I stood. I have a toast, I said, lifting my glass. They looked up, a bit surprised, but relaxed. To family, I said, and to the lies we builded on. My mother froze, mid-sip. Mark's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Dad slowly turned to look at me. I placed the brown envelope on the table and began pulling out the papers, one by one. Let's start with this, I said, holding up the DNA results. Mark, turns out you're more than just my uncle. You're my biological father. My mother gasped. Her hands trembled. Mark's face drained of all color. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. Don't bother. I have the messages too. Every filthy word. Every secret meetup. Every plan to keep Dad in the dark. I dropped the printed messages on the table. My dad reached for them, scanning the pages slowly, without a word. His eyes didn't water. They narrowed. For the first time in years, he looked alive. I also updated Dad's trust, I said calmly. He signed over power of attorney last week. I made sure if infidelity ever came to light, the offending spouse would be removed from all inheritance. My mom shook her head, whispering, Ethan, please. I ignored her. You don't own the house anymore. Everything's been transferred into Dad's name only. Effective immediately. You'll receive a formal notice of eviction next week. Mark slammed his hands on the table. You've gone too far. I'm not done, I interrupted. I turned to my father. You knew, didn't you? He nodded slowly. I knew something, but I never had proof. I wanted to protect you. I just didn't know how to destroy what little we had left. I looked at him, heart pounding. Well, I'm not you. I wasn't built to tolerate betrayal. I was built by it. Mark stood, furious. You think you can ruin my life and just walk away? I took out my phone and played a recording. It was one of his voice messages, one where he joked about fooling my dad, calling him a clueless old man. I already sent that to your company. Check your inbox. They should be calling you any minute. And as if fate was listening, Mark's phone rang. He stared at the screen, turned pale, and stumbled out of the room. My mom buried her face in her hands. Ethan, what have you done? I looked at her without a shred of pity. I unburied the truth. That's all. She cried. Not because she lost her son, but because she lost her grip. Dad rose to his feet and walked around the table. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I don't know what happens next, he said quietly, but I'm proud of you for not letting it destroy you. I nodded. I didn't let it destroy me. I used it. We left together, father and son, not by blood, but by choice. The one man who raised me, who never stopped loving me, who deserved better than the betrayal that festered in silence. As we stepped outside, the night air felt sharper, cleaner. Behind us, the house fell silent. And in that silence, Their new life began, not one built on lies and comfort, but on consequences. And I wasn't just the boy they tried to hide. I became the man who burned down the lie they called family. What would you do if your whole life was built on a lie? Would you forgive, or would you bring it all down like he did? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more stories that leave your jaw on the floor.